Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to this Monday, December 18th, 2023 regular session of the Carmel Clay School Board. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Madam President. Everyone is here and accounted for.
Thank you. If you'll please rise and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I do apologize as I'm getting over a head cold, so if I sound stuffy, that's why. We will now move on to the public comment portion of our evening. Tonight's agenda includes updates to our existing library book review policy to ensure compliance with state law. We are not debating the selection of books or the merits of existing materials. As board members, our role is to oversee the adoption and use of the review policy. Remember, this is a time for public comment, not for presentations or performances. If individuals choose to violate the guidance for public comment information that you were given when you signed up to speak, the speaker may be determined to be out of order and may be asked to return to his or her seat. Please review and familiarize yourself with the public comment rules. The numbers that were on your public comment card that you filled out will be placed in a basket, and Dr. Ostrike will call out 2 numbers at a time. The first will speak, and the second person will be on deck. When your name is called, please go to the microphone and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak. We have a timer at the podium so that you can gauge your time. We have slated 30 minutes for public comment, and the countdown time will be on the screen. Thank you for participating. I would like to remind you of some of the following things that are in I'd like to remind you of a couple following things that are in our policy. Participants must be recognized by the presiding officer, myself, and must preface their comments with an announcement of your name and group affiliation if applicable. You may not reference specific corporation employees, patrons, or students. Your comment should be directed to the board, and no person may address or question individual members. And as a general matter, the school board will not act on or respond to questions or comments made during public comment, but we will take them under advisement. If needed, the presiding officer or myself may interrupt, warn, or terminate a person's statement if the statement is too lengthy, a personal attack against a student, employee, or school official, harassing, obscene, or irrelevant, and request you to leave the meeting if you do not observe reasonable decorum. I'm sure we will have absolutely no problems tonight. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. Can you please pull the first 2 numbers?
First number is number 1, followed by number 5.
All right, so we have Megan Atkins as number 1, and number 5 is Michelle Wise.
Hi, I'm Megan Adkins, and I'm the parent of 2 freshmen at Carmel High School. I'm a mental health professional who's dedicated my 25-year career to children's healthy development. I've also volunteered with youth and youth organizations since college and continue now. I've attended conferences and trainings about children's exposure to pornography and keeping them safe. I have worked with countless children who have been victimized and traumatized by exposure to pornography. I belong to groups who keep current on research about children and risks to their health around this and many other issues. I was speaking to Stephanie Whiteside, the CCS mental health coordinator at the time, about education on digital safety before Moms for Liberty even existed. Never once have any of these experts who are passionate about this issue mentioned school libraries, the fault in our stars, or protecting children from books, librarians, and school policies. These experts and me want nothing more than to protect children from harm. We also want to do this with facts, applying research and addressing identified threats, because we want our interventions to be impactful, useful, and actually help children. I appreciate the passion that certain groups are bringing to children's safety, but unfortunately they miss the target. Much more impactful would be to support parent filters, parent monitoring of electronics, and working for legal advancement of an opt-in policy for internet pornography to be passed in the U.S. So let's be honest, this is really about fear of and rejection to rapid cultural change and social unrest, which is when cultures experience these recycled conversations about book removals. I'm the daughter of 2 teachers and the niece and cousin of librarians. These people value education, service, and working with youth, and do this for love of educating and supporting our future generation. They could be in a more lucrative field, but they choose to share knowledge with our youth and deserve to be respected for their passion, service, and expertise. I was moved to write a thank you letter to the Carmel Middle librarian for the special time she took in guiding my son towards his favorite genre of books and going above and beyond to support his love of reading. As a parent, I am content with the current policy in place and know that if I have a concern, I have several avenues already in place to address it. I have been, sorry, that was distracting. I have been extremely satisfied with CCS's communication strategies, transparencies, and parental involvement. In fact, sometimes it seems like too many emails. Our best weapon for childhood health and resilience is to prepare the child for the path, because the world is not going back. Research shows that offering healthy examples of relationships and sex and allowing for children to have support and debrief and process what they have seen and experienced works to support,
Michelle Wise.
On deck is number 11.
My name is
Kristen
Michelle Wise,
Kolowski.
and I am a mom of an 8th grader and a 4th grader in the Carmel School District. As we watch the news across the country, there is a common topic that is being discussed: the age appropriateness of books in school libraries and public libraries. Book banning, book removal, and book reallocation is not a new concept. In the course of history, this is something that has attempted and even been achieved. However, in the end, the consensus has been that it is wrong to censor books. Yet we are watching history repeat itself, as we recently watched the HEPL board attempt to reallocate books, which resulted in an upset community, and now we are watching Carmel Clay Schools encounter a similar issue. No one will deny that protecting our children, both mentally and physically, is the most important goal we all want to achieve as parents. However, our community is not focusing on the right threat when the concern turns to our school libraries. Librarians are highly educated in their line of work, and we should trust their capabilities of selecting appropriate books for the Carmel Clay School libraries. One may argue that what is age appropriate for one is not age appropriate for another, but removing a particular book for all children is not the answer. Libraries are there for learning and growing. Books are meant to spark emotion, excitement, be educational, and even take one out of their comfort zone. Removing a book for a select few removes the opportunity for other students to experience a book they may enjoy and learn from. Puberty and development is a topic that comes up frequently when discussing age appropriateness. Children mature at different ages, some as young as 8. Asking their parents questions about their changing bodies may not be comfortable or possible, but a book on the subject may help a child understand their body better and could be used as a tool to open up a dialogue to their parents. Books that have educational content on the developing human body is not pornographic in nature, as understanding their changing bodies is essential. A book also does not contain pornography simply because there is a scene in a book that one may feel is inappropriate. Typically, that one scene is a part of a bigger story, and one will not fully understand the context of a story without reading the entire book. Carmel Clay Schools also has a policy in place and proposing a new policy that meets state law for parents to report concerns. It's not necessary to use valuable meeting minutes to read off pages of a book that one finds offensive. Simply take the time to read the book first so you know the book is truly inappropriate, and then report it. Problem solved. Your child will not have access to the book as you wish, but my child will still be able to, because my child isn't your child. And we do not need to be parenting one another's children. Carmel Clay Schools are great schools with professional, qualified staff, including our librarians. We need to stop micromanaging a topic that we are hyperfixating on simply because we are obsessed with controlling a narrative we are not qualified to control. Let the professionals do their job, and as a parent, you are entitled to follow the policy in place that aligns with state law to control what you want your child to read, but you aren't entitled to control the books all children can read.
Kristen Kolowski. Did I say that wrong?
On deck is number 10.
Kristen, are you here? Did I say your name wrong?
My name's Kirsten Kovalevsky. I'm a parent to 2 teenagers in CCS. I'm a certified school library media specialist with a master's degree in library science, a specialist certificate in media technology, and K-12 teacher certification in school media services. I volunteer at the Clay Middle School Library. A core element of librarianship is collection development, building a collection that best serves the community the library serves. In a school library, the primary mission of collection development is to support learning with materials necessary for teaching and learning, using criteria that include reading level, developmental level, interests and needs of students, balanced with the funds available. Many school librarians receive graduate level education, and they have practical experience in building a collection that appropriately supports a school community's learning. There have been accusations that school libraries here contain raw pornography. No school librarian considers that to support the curriculum or would spend money on that when there are so many valuable materials available that do support student learning. I understand that Indiana state law will allow people not affiliated with the schools to challenge materials for removal from school libraries on the basis that they are harmful to minors. The assumption that school librarians would be so unethical as to give children pornography is what is really harmful. A school is a community consisting of people of varying ages, experiences, interests, reading levels, and needs. Different individuals are at different levels of readiness for some kinds of information, but all of them deserve to have the learning materials they need. It's a parent's job to educate their child about what is appropriate reading material for them to check out. If a parent doesn't want their child reading Junie B. Jones, it is their job and their right as a parent to tell them they can't. It's a parent's right and responsibility to be aware of what their child is reading. A person who's not affiliated with a particular school community cannot make an accurate judgment. A school librarian can listen to any concern and help a child make a better for them choice. Unique individuals make up the school community a school library serves. CCS has a policy in place aligned with state law. There's no reason to remove a book for all students because it is not right for your student.
Thank you. And I apologize for your name that I messed it up. Can you tell me the next few numbers?
10,
Okay. Beth Sprunger.
and then 8 is on deck.
Hi, my name is Beth Sprunger. First of all, I just want to say thank you for inviting the public to speak tonight, and I want to thank the board and Dr. Beresford for their part in making this school district so amazing. I currently have children in elementary and middle school here in Carmel, and I have one more starting kindergarten next year. So our family will be enrolled in the district for a total of 22 years by the time my youngest graduates from high school. So I obviously have a very vested interest in the success of this school district. In the 9 years that I have experienced so far here at Carmel Schools, my kids have had the most amazing teachers and administrators, and I credit this to the teachers and staff who are both supported and trusted to do their job here. When it comes to books in libraries and classrooms, we have never experienced anything I found objectionable, and I consider myself a pretty strict parent when it comes to content. Every time a movie has been shown in one of my children's classes, I've had the option to opt my child out of that, and I have taken that option a few times when I didn't think it was appropriate for them. I also know that if books are in the library that I don't want my child reading, I have the option to restrict them from reading those books. And I have a great open communication with all of my students' teachers so that I know that if I had a problem with a book that was in their classroom, I would also have the option to talk to my teachers to make sure that my child didn't have access to that. What I also know is that whatever choices I make for my family might not be the same choices that others make for their family, and I shouldn't have the ability to make those decisions for other people. As I understand it, the role of the board is to ensure that a policy is in place that complies with state law, not to discuss specific materials, and I believe that that policy already exists, so I'm thinking tonight's conversation should be a short one. I want to thank you for your time, and thank you for making these schools where I feel confident putting my kids on the bus every day.
Thank you. Rebecca Lime.
Three is on deck. 3.
Mary Strika.
Hi, my name's Becky Lime. I've been a resident of Carmel most of my life. The dedication that administrators, staff, and teachers have toward the kids in our schools is second to none, and the result is an award-winning school system that students, parents, and residents can take pride in. The administrators and media specialists of Carmel Clay Schools take great care in curating items for the various media centers that are appropriate and inclusive, and with this slight change in wording to the already existing policy, they will continue to stay within the guidelines of Indiana law. They've consulted with experts in interpreting the law to confirm that these changes align with the new legislation. Book restrictions only really ask one question: does this book or phrase from a book offend my personal values? And those who want to restrict them assume an affirmative answer to this question: is it okay to impose my values on everyone else? What if a parent or small group of parents decide their children aren't going to wear polka dots or plaid? Should they be able to take that right away from everyone else's child? What if a parent decides their child needs protection from other groups of kids and want that group of kids to be identified by some kind of shape affixed to their shirt or jacket? A star, for instance. Some people already know where I'm heading with this, while others do not and would instead be tone deaf enough to use a quote from Adolf Hitler for their group's newsletter. Perhaps that group should read the graphic novel Mouse, one of the books their group has frequently found to be objectionable. Let me clue you in. It's not really about cats and mice. It's a memoir of the author's Polish immigrant parents in Nazi Germany. Each time we say the Pledge of Allegiance, we repeat the words "with liberty and justice for all." Ask yourself, do I believe this? Do I live this? Because if you don't believe in liberty for all. You believe in privilege for some.
Thank you. Mary Strinka?
My name's Mary Strinka. I've been a Carmel resident for 28 years. Two of my sons attended Carmel Clay Schools for a combined 18 years between the two of them. Both of them have chosen to pursue their careers and raise their own families outside of Indiana. But I still care about the quality of our school district because I have some wonderful neighbors who have some wonderful kids. All of us who are parents or have been parents have felt sometimes opposing instincts because we want to show our child just how wonderful the whole world is and all of its possibilities, but we also want to protect them from harm. So we applaud their efforts to reach that next rung up on the monkey bars, and we hold our breath underneath them. I know you've all felt that. And then we have to balance these goals like making a million decisions about bicycles, about sleepovers, about going to band camp or joining a sports team, going to a particular museum. And most of the time, we decide to give our kids permission to take part in these activities because we know it's good for them, because we know we want them to see the world from a perspective that's broader than what any one family can provide. Now, every family is going to find that comfort zone, maybe in a slightly different place, how far they want their child to reach out and risk. And I don't claim that I stand here for every family in Carmel, but I do think that I'm part of the mainstream consensus contingent, where we frame the world primarily in terms of possibilities and opportunities, not prohibitions and restrictions. Now, there are some communities here in Indiana where their community consensus might lean a little different way. They might have more insular values. They might prefer larger restrictions. But I honestly believe that most families here in Carmel prefer wide perspectives over narrow ones. And we're happy when our children grow into experiences that go beyond our own. When it comes to evaluating the material in our media centers, we know that this administration is going to make every effort they need to abide by state laws and all other laws. But the question that was posed at the last meeting more than once is, should our policies be even more restrictive? Should we be proactively purging books that people might find objectionable? I would hope that the answer to that is no. I encourage you to serve the interests of the larger community by continuing to provide the enriching and challenging material at all grade levels while allowing the parents the transparency and access they need to guide their child's choices. I really just want to make this board aware that there are many people in my generation who do not agree with the viewpoints of Moms for Limitations.
your
We want
comments.
more for our children and our community, not
Thank you.
less.
Jeffrey Bolt,
And then 7 is on deck. 2, then 7.
Jim May on deck.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Jeff Bolt. I'm a reproductive biologist by profession. My 2 daughters are proud graduates of the Carmel Clay School System. Justice Potter Stewart, in a famous Supreme Court case on obscenity, stated, "I can't define it, but I know it when I see it." And he ruled against a certain film being obscene. The American Library Association reports that in 2022, requests to restrict library books were higher than any previous year, with most of those involving supposed sexual or LGBTQIA+ content. Our school board is now put in the unenviable position of trying to appease every citizen of Carmel. The new law asks you to restrict books that have nudity, sexual content, or sadomasochistic abuse, persuades minors to engage in sexual activity, would be offensive to community standards, and be void of literary, artistic, political, or scientific value based solely on any one individual's feelings. But the board has in place clear policies on challenging books already, with specific steps and different individuals, including trained librarians, teachers, administration, and parents involved. For those interested, it is Policy 5521. Parents can also monitor and control what their child checks out from the school library. Simply put, the board has a solution in search of a problem, not the other way around. Where this issue falls flat is the definition of community standard and what constitutes value. In our community, reasonable people understand cherry-picking one paragraph out of an entire book does not constitute obscenity. Take the example cherry-picked from the book Jesus Land at last month's board meeting. The book involves a woman telling the story of her upbringing involving abuse, racism, and indoctrination, and the effect on her life and relationships. In context, the cherry-picked material is an important aspect of her story with literary and artistic value. A book like this is important and relevant to young women who are suffering a similar fate. Much like LGBTQIA+ students benefit from books speaking to their life story. Going back to Justice Stewart, while I can't define it, I know what obscenity isn't when I see it. Books that describe the human condition, books that are meaningful to students, that speaks to their lives and their struggles, that may contain a swear word or two or reference to sex as part of the story's context, are not. Students have the maturity and temperament to accept challenging material, and together with their dedicated teachers, can discuss material calmly and rationally. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Jim May,
And then we have 6 on deck.
Christina Wheeler.
Hi, I'm Jim May. I'm a parent of 2 kids at Woodbrook Elementary, and I'm here tonight to speak in support of our school media centers, the specialists that staff them, and the current and proposed policies pertaining to them. I went through multiple drafts of what to say tonight. I managed to find time over the last month to read 6 of the 7 books that were mentioned at the last meeting. I brushed up on the Supreme Court's Miller test for defining obscenity. At one point, I even put together a list of scenes in PG and PG-13 movies that come far, far closer to meeting the definition of pornography than anything in books like The Kite Runner or Jesus Land. But in the end, I decided to keep it simple. I want my kids to grow up in a school system that prepares them for life, that exposes them to a broad variety of attitudes, opinions, and beliefs, and fosters an ability to respectfully disagree, that teaches them how to see both sides of an issue and helps them to learn to think critically, even about the beliefs and values that my wife and I are working to instill in them. I believe that CCS strives to maintain such a learning environment. I believe that the current proposed media policies reflect that commitment. As always, I'd like to thank everyone at CCS, especially the teachers and staff in our schools doing so much for our kids every day. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina Wheeler?
Hi, my name is Christina Wheeler. I am an attorney and the parent of a class of 2022 CHS graduate and an 8th grader in CCS. First, I want to thank you all for having gone through what are some of the most challenging years in our school district that I can recall. I've had a child in CCS for every one of the last 17 years, and I have another 4.5 years in front of me. I see that there are currently several media specialists in the room. Madam President, with your permission, I'd just like to recognize them and thank them, ask them to stand for their work. I'm an 80s kid, and before the internet and Google, I used to call the librarian to get information that we'd normally Google for. So I appreciate you all being here. I encourage you to stay the course on our current policy, which, as you know, is meeting the needs of the law and the vast majority, I believe, of our community. In the 17 years that I have been in Carmel Clay Schools, I've also been on, I am vice chair of impact for the Carmel Education Foundation. I'm an attorney. I've never heard parents raise the issues that are being raised about our book policy now. I hear parents talking about things like, how do we bring the best services directly to our children? How do we compensate and recognize our amazing teachers and staff at a level to which they will stay and make it a lifelong commitment? I hear them talking about, how do we protect our children's mental health? How do we make sure they are safe in our schools? I hope with all of my heart that you all will continue to follow what in your hearts I believe you know to be true, and your training and common sense, and move forward to the things in 2024 that truly matter to our students, to our staff, and to our community as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
4 and then 9, and then that will conclude.
All right. Luke McConnell?
Hello, my name's Luke McConnell. I'm a longtime resident of Carmel. In fact, I think if we asked the parents in this room, I think most, if not all of the parents will say that they moved to Carmel or stayed in Carmel specifically for our schools. I'm in the same boat. I'm a graduate of Carmel High School some mumble years ago. Now, it seems to me that we are all here for the world-class education opportunities that are afforded to Carmel students. Now, reasonable people might disagree about what exactly is or isn't part of a quality education, but to me, I'm of the opinion that a quality education necessarily includes the opportunity to engage with a diverse range of opinions, even opinions or ideas that might be unpopular or unfamiliar or even flat out offensive. It's important for an education that a person gets truly educated by engaging with these new ideas. And that's not just my questionably qualified opinion either. The American author F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote, and I'm quoting here, "The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposing ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function." I have to ask, how are we going to give our children a first-rate education if we never allow them the opportunity to face this diverse range of ideas? So, as members of a certain national group that doesn't need to be mentioned, have spoken at previous meetings to demand the removal of books that come on their list of pre-disapproved books, all under the guise of parental rights, I feel a need to reassert my own rights as a parent and as a taxpayer to protect the educational opportunities that our children have enjoyed since I was a CCS child, to refuse to acquiesce to a movement that demands only the most restrictive environment for kids to learn in, and to reject the inflammatory and defamatory rhetoric that bizarrely equates the freedom of inquiry with child abuse. Now, I think I can even find one more point of agreement with an unnamed national group, because I actually do support a parent's right to direct their students' education and even to object to portions of that. But that's as far as it goes. You get to make those decisions for your kids. You may not, and you will not, make those decisions for mine. Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead, we have one more. I'm going to go ahead and do that in our time remaining. Maureen Morgan.
My name is Maureen Morgan, and I thank you for this opportunity. I will be speaking the opposing view. So, in addressing the last meeting concerning the defense of the pornographic material in schools, I want to oppose the argument that we should keep books containing pornography because they have literary value. Carmel Clay School District is supposed to raise the bar. Parents and students have higher expectations on the quality of education in Carmel. Our highly trained librarians are more than capable of finding and searching for other excellent books and great writings with even better literary value that do not contain questionable material. Literary value, it's based on universal and timeless appeal. Texts with literary value, they promote questions and provoke good thought. The books that were discussed and defended at the last meeting, they just went with the current agenda, our children. Though our students' preferences for different reading materials to be celebrated and promoted, we can accommodate each student without damaging the innocence of our children. The second point I'd like to make is the lack of our district's careful consideration of HB 1447 that's taken effect in January. The intent of this House bill is to protect students from being exposed to pornography in schools. It does not appear that any current books referenced at that last meeting will be removed from any shelves in the Carmel district. The bill makes it a Class 6 felony to expose obscene material to minors unless it has literary value. For a teacher or librarian in our district who may face those felony charges because these books and similar books aren't removed, literary value will be a very weak defense for them. Sorry, is that me? It's going to be a weak defense for them to stand on. So when a parent files a lawsuit and their child is harmed by such material, it's going to be up to a prosecutor or judge, not an educator, to decide if they're guilty or innocent. So again, Carmel should be set apart. Indiana school districts were trusted to have moral decency, and they lost the trust of the people, as evidenced by the need for House Bill 1447 to be passed. So please consider the consequences that our district and you as a board could face without making these needed adjustments. Thank you.
Thank you all for your comments this evening. We will now move on to the consent items in our agenda. May I have a motion to approve consent? Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor of approving consent, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Yeah. Thank you. We'll now move on. At this time, I need to suspend the regular board meeting to hold 2 public hearings. After the motions, do I have a motion to suspend?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Thank you, Louise. As a reminder, comments shall be directed to the board. No person may address or question individual board members. And as a general matter, the school board will not act on or respond to questions or comments made during public comment, but will take them under advisement. We will now open the public hearing regarding additional appropriation of the proceeds of the 2024 bonds in an amount not to exceed $75,500,000. Mr. McMichael, would you like to make any comments?
I would. The purpose of this hearing is to take the steps necessary to appropriate bond funds, which we are selling to do facility projects and some technology as well in 2024. And so appropriately, the public has opportunity to comment on the need, or really on these projects, and therefore the need for the appropriation. The appropriation is essentially just gives the authority to actually use the money that after the bonds are sold. And so there is opportunity for public comment. Unlike the public comment that we just experienced, which can be on any topic, as you know, this hearing is specifically for this topic and these projects. And so I would recommend that you give opportunity for that, for comments relative to this appropriation.
Thank you. At this time, we'll offer members of the public an opportunity to make comments regarding these plans up at the microphone. Seeing that there are no comments or further from members of the public, we will close the public hearing regarding the additional appropriation of the 2024 bonds and open the public hearing regarding additional appropriation for funds for various tax-supported funds. Mr. McMichael.
Okay, this is the same type of hearing for additional appropriation, only this appropriation is for the various tax-supported funds, as you noted. Our budgets were for 2023 were developed in the summer of 22, so about 18 months ago. And there's, as is typical, there's any number of changes to the projections or the forecast that was made at that time. For example, when we put that budget together, we did not have the state funding formula for the second year because our funding comes on a fiscal basis, but we were required to have the budget on a calendar basis. So we made an estimate of what that might look like, and of course, when it was finally approved by the state legislature, it changed. And so that's just one example. But as with any appropriation, we have the funds. This, again, the appropriation process gives us the authority to actually expend the funds.
Thank you. At this time, I will offer members of the public an opportunity to make comments regarding these plans. Seeing that there are no public comments from members of the public, we will close the public hearing regarding the additional appropriation of funds. We will now move on to action items for this evening to adopt the resolution approving additional appropriation for the 2024 bonds. Mr. McMichael.
So this is just the, after the hearing, we're recommending that these resolutions be adopted to, so that we would then submit this to this for state approval, because it not only requires school board approval, but the state will confirm that in fact we have the money to appropriate in the first place.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Kristen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jenny. Discussion. All right, seeing there's no discussion, all those in favor of approving the adoption involving additional appropriation for the 2024 bonds, please signify by saying aye. 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 Motion carries 5-0. All right, we'll now move on to 5.2, adopt the resolution approving additional appropriation of funds for $1,800,000 for the operating referendum, $300,000 for the safety referendum, and $1,300,000 for the operation fund, and $487,167 for the debt service fund. Mr. McMichael.
Thank you. And again, this is essentially this a similar resolution as the one you just approved, except for the local funds.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve? So moved. Thank you, Louise. Second.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion. Seeing that there is none, all those in favor of approving 5.2, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. We'll now move on to change orders for the Carmel High School Performing Arts addition and renovations. Mr. McMichael.
Thank you. This is an add change order for that project in the amount of $21,859.53. The specifics of the change order are listed in your report. For the most part, I believe it had to do with some existing conditions that were unforeseen at the time the bids were solicited.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Kristen. Discussion? Greg?
Yeah, just a question, looking at the project overall, it was originally for $1.4 million?
This contract was, would be 1.4 million. The project was about 25 million.
Okay. But in the previous changes were 1.1 million, which is about an 80% increase. And I was just hoping you could explain a little bit why we had, what's been going on with this particular contract, that it's...
I'm not clear on where you're getting the $1 million or 1.8 million.
Maybe I could be reading the file wrong. Let me bring it up here. The original contract sum was 1.4 million.
For this contractor?
Yeah, I'm looking at the attachment that was in the agenda.
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. Yes.
I was just wondering if you could give some background about...
I believe I can, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You may recall that we had a contractor on this project that was unable to perform their contract, and so there were multiple change orders that you approved in order to have other contractors do that work, and this, I'm sure that that's what this is. It's not that the project increased, it's that we had to give the work to a different contractor, thus increase their contract to do work what otherwise would have been done by the original contractor. And of course, we deduct that then from the contract amount for the first contractor that didn't perform.
So we're not really incurring this amount of the change?
We are incurring the amount of change for this contractor, but essentially what's happening is this contractor, their contract went up because they're doing work that the non-performing contractor did not do. And so we have to pay them to do that. And then we would, of course, lower and not pay the first contractor because they didn't do the work. So the project cost didn't go up by that amount. Okay. It's just moving from, we're decreasing one contract for failure to perform and increasing another.
Okay. Yeah, it just looks, kind of stands out.
That's not typical, by the way. We're fortunate that most times the contractors are able to perform the work.
Okay. Thank you.
Kristen?
And a lot of this, I think we've talked about this in the past, from what we see, appears to be a safety issue that has to be done, structural and that sort of thing.
Yes.
Any other comments? All right, all those in favor of approving the change orders for the Carmel High School Performing Arts addition and renovation, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries 5-0. We'll now move on to change orders for the Carmel High School Greyhound Activity Center. Mr. McMichael.
Thank you. And this change order is in the amount of, it's an add change order in the amount of $11,332, and it had to do with needing larger structural beams than was originally anticipated in the specifications.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Jenny. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Louise. Discussion? Seeing there is none, all those in favor of approving change orders for their Carmel High School Greyhound Activity Center, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries 5-0. We'll now move on to the adoption 5.5. Yep, the adoption of policy 5521, selection and review of instructional materials and equipment. Dr. Dudley.
Yes, thank you. So the current board policy 5521 pertains to the selection and review of instructional materials used in the classroom, as well as library materials such as books and periodicals that are in our media collections. The new law that will go into effect January 1st, 2024, refers to the process to submit a request for the removal of materials from the school library. So in order to provide clarity in our policies, we separated into two policies, one pertaining to the instructional materials that are used in the classroom, and then the second policy for the library materials in the media collections. So they're two different policies. The first draft version of Board Policy 5521 covers the selection, review, and removal of instructional materials used in the classroom. So the changes to that policy took out anything that was in the library and the media collections, and it pertains to only the instructional materials that are in the classroom. That is the first policy.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve? Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Greg. Discussion. Anything? Okay. All those in favor of approving adoption of policy 5521, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries 5-0. We'll now move on to the adoption of policy 5522, the selection, review, and removal of school library materials. Dr. Dudley.
So the proposed board policy 5522 covers the selection, review, and removal of school library materials. So this is a new policy that is pertaining to just the material that's in the school libraries. So the policy outlines the criteria used in selecting materials to be included in the media collections and includes a process that a parent, guardian, or of a student enrolled in the corporation or a community member may submit a request to remove the material from the school library on the grounds the material is obscene or harmful to minors, as those terms are defined by the Indiana Criminal Code 3549-21 and 3549-32. So the policy changes have been vetted by our legal team to be compliant, and once the policies have been approved by the board, the administrative guidelines will be updated for both of these policies, and then the appropriate staff members, including the media specialists, will be receive training on the new policies and the administrative guidelines prior to the students returning in January.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Greg. Discussion. Kristen.
I just wanted to reiterate what we kind of talked about earlier, that we have talked about previously, that we are voting on the policies based on that we need to make sure that these have met the new state guidelines that are starting January 1st. And so that is why we have, done a mix of using the legal team and the administration. And so that is what gave us this policy to make sure that we are in line with the law.
Yes.
And I'm just going to repeat what you said because you were so soft-spoken. That's okay. We originally had one policy, but we have broken it up into two policies.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Greg.
Yeah, to reiterate what Kristen just said is that tonight we're reviewing the policy, and we've had some iterations back and forth with the administration, and I think you've done a good job with meeting the intent of the law. So I think the policy, as you've drafted it, looks good. And I know we're going to update our administrative guidelines once we've decided to approve the policy or not. So I think we're okay there. I do think that our state legislature and our governor has made it very clear and have listened to the voters that the introduction of pornography into our society as a whole is a dangerous road to go down. And I think this law, as was outlined by some of the comments, agrees that the seriousness of that legislators have taken is very clear. I mean, the fact they've removed the protection of schools from a felony 6 charge is an underline to that. And I know that as far as how that is carried out, I don't know how that would go, but I think it's important to realize that the legislation was put in there because there's a lot of people in our community, in our state, that have a lot of concerns on this. So in listening to the commentary tonight, and I appreciate that, to hear both sides on an issue like this, it is a very controversial issue, and there's a lot of people on both sides of the issue. So I think we had a little bit of a precursor discussion last time about how we're going to implement it. I think the real test will be when books are being appealed, it'll be brought to the board. This board as the final approval if the person is not satisfied with it. And I think that's an important step to bring that before the community. But I think what is really important with local boards, the purpose of a local board is to represent the community, listen to the community, and of course implement the laws. I think what we're supposed to do in this case is, I've heard good comments on both sides, and I
comment I hear is, I don't want someone else's values being dictated on my children. And I think both sides have that concern and that issue. So I think what we're supposed to do as a board is to find a common ground solution as we implement things such that we pretty well take care of almost all concerns of both sides of the issue. I don't think we've gotten to that point yet. The policy is not perhaps at that kind of level. Perhaps the administrative guidelines could do that. I know there is this is a big issue a couple years ago, and it came up again here last week, but there's a question I do have is, I think when it was addressed before, there was somewhere along the process, a new section in the high school library was created called Rosie's. And I think when a lot of books were reviewed in the past, a lot of books were moved to that section. And that section, if I understand it right, requires parent approval before a child can actually check a book out, rather than after the fact where a parent would have to be watching what a child's checking out. And given that our abstracts don't really tell us the kind of pornography content that might be there, nor is there a rating like we have with movies. We have R ratings and PG-13. We don't have those things with our books in the library. So I was wondering if Amy, if you could talk a little bit about that section, the purpose, and how we procedurally implement it?
I do not know what you're referring to as far as a place in the high school library called Rosie's. I'm unfamiliar with that.
Okay. I guess the point I'd like to leave us with, or the challenge, is I think listening to all sides of the community, we should look for a common ground solution. We should find a way that parents don't have to come after the fact to the board and say, this book's got pornographic content that I don't want my child exposed to. And similarly, parents don't want to have books, taken out of the libraries for almost any reason. So I think we need to have some kind of maybe a committee or something come about that looks at both sides of the issue and comes up with a solution that would be that would work. Because I think what we talked about the meeting on the 13th in November, I was sensing that as a parent and community member, I would not be happy with the judgment that was going to be rendered on some of these books. But if that book was in a zone where I know my child or my grandchild, in this case, wouldn't be able to check it out with parental approval, I would be okay with that. I think we need to look for that kind of a solution going forward.
Thank you. Any other board comments?
I just want to,
Louise?
yeah, I just want to commend the team for being willing to have the conversation, listen to the varying perspectives, commend the community for sharing their varying perspectives. And in response to Greg, I think we are at a place where we've considered all of the perspectives in drafting the procedure or the policy. And so thank you, team, for that work. And I'm looking forward to seeing the policy implemented and how we do with that. Thank you.
Kristen?
And just piggybacking on what Louise said, that's one of the most important things that a board does is we put policies into effect that make sure that we're in line with state laws and policies. And so, it's not really our place to be saying whether we like or dislike the state law. We just have to make sure that the school district is following the law. And so that's what our job here tonight is.
Thank you. Any more comments? All right, all those in favor of the adoption of policy 5522, selection, review, and removal of school library materials, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries 5-0. We'll now move on to the report section of the evening, the monthly financial update. Mr. McMichael.
little technical difficulty here. Okay. Well, this report is actually through October, because this early in December, we haven't closed the books on November yet, so we'll bring that to you in January. So starting with our education referendum and rainy day funds, as the board knows, we combine those funds just for simplicity and usually do look at them in total. And you can see that for 2020, comparing 2023 to 2022, we are we showing more here in our cash balance this time or less in our cash balance, I'm sorry, in October. That's primarily due to an increase in the rainy day fund that, as you may recall, we by design, we plan to increase that fund so it would increase our cash balance, which helps us when we sell bonds and so forth, that Standard & Poor's would prefer we carry a little bit more cash than we historically have done. And then going to the operations fund, again, by this time of the year in October, we're about where we would expect to be. As I usually say, this fund is not as comparable because of the nature of the fund. We have facility maintenance and so forth that the expenditures are not, the percentage of expenditures are not as high as far as salary and benefits as the education fund and referendum fund. Therefore, they can vary from one time of the year to the other. And then you can see, I believe, and so here was 2022. And then, as I noted, in our rainy day fund, we're currently at $4.7 million. And that's primarily due to a transfer. That increase is due to a transfer that we did earlier this year. And with that, I'd respond to any questions that you have.
Questions from the board? Greg, did you?
Roger, do you know what the transfer was in the rainy day fund, the $35,000?
I don't. I think you may have seen that in an email, but I didn't go back to look that up, so I can follow up with you on that.
Yeah, if you could, please. And we also had a little conversation that at the end of the day, apologize for the late questions, but I think you did a great job getting to it. Could you explain on the operations fund that I know we've got to transfer the $2.5 million transfer to the rainy day fund, but it just looks like we're going to run out of money there at the end in the next 2 months. Could you explain a little bit?
I can, and we're not going to run out of money. So that's the short answer, and the good news is we're not going to run out of money. But let me get to that. I think one thing you're looking at is when you look at October in the operations fund, because that's where we transferred the $2.5 million to the rainy day fund, that's showing up as though it were an expense. And in a sense it is. It's moving the funds from one fund to the other. But that's, if you look at previous months, they're more typical of what we will spend in a month. And again, it's not exact. But what we actually have is there's $3.3 million of encumbrances that were carried forward from the prior year. So that means that last December, we might have had a facility project or something, or several perhaps, but $3.3 million was carried forward into this year, and the appropriation to go with it. So eventually those funds were probably spent in the first quarter of 2024, but the effect of that is that it adds $3.3 million of appropriation to our budget that was of $28 million. So what we actually have is the $31 million, plus we're about to have another $1.3 million because of the appropriation you just approved. And so, which gets you to about $5 million left, because your concern, of course, was we have 2 more months to go and it looks like we don't have any money. And, but we actually have about 5 million, which is about, that'll cover the next 2 months.
Thanks.
You bet.
Any other questions? All right, we'll now move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. I thought I'd start with something that went through in the consent agenda, and we had some gifts, and I wanted to share that Carmel Elementary School received 2 gifts from the Home Office Depot School Supply Drive, and so they had, for Q2, they got $2,167, and for Q3, they got $3,210. That's good, and I know the families of Carmel Elementary is getting a lot of benefit out of that, which is good. Some patrons of Creekside Middle School donated $1,225 to the Performing Arts Department. And if you saw their show, their musical this year, you know why. It was fantastic. And then Walk Trails Elementary, Charlie and Dana Moore donated $200 to the Winter Wonderland Holiday Gift Program. And they also, Charlie and Dana, donated $300 to the guidance services to help families who are in need. So love our community because people that do those things. And Carmel Middle School received $88 from Coca-Cola Give program. So, have a Coke and do some good. And then Woodbrook Elementary, Blake and Allison Kasanovich donated $900 to 3 classrooms. So 3 classrooms got $300, and so that's like pennies from heaven for 3 teachers there at Woodbrook. It was pretty special. And then Martin Marietta, they just always are dropping money into just general donations to Carmel High School, so appreciate that too. Always appreciate the support and the giving. I've been lucky to work in this county for a long time, and whenever there was a need, people stepped up, and I really appreciate that. Also wanted to do a commercial for Dr. Ostrike and to get out into the community that on January 8th, so after all the things have calmed down, on January 8th, there's going to be a non-certified staff recruitment fair at Clay Middle School from 3:30 to 6:30 p.m. And non-certified would be like bus drivers and instructional assistants and custodians, really all the food service. Am I missing any? I think I got most of them. So if you know anybody, spread the word. We still are in need of employees in those fields, and would love to have some people join our team. So January 8th at 3:30, 6:30, Clay Middle School. I thought I'd make tonight's report just mostly about fine arts because I went to some super cool shows here lately. And the first one I went to was the Percussion Ensemble concert. And I just want to give a big shout out to them because they were chosen to attend the Midwest Clinic in Chicago, which is really a big honor. They only pick the top, the very best of the best go to perform there because they have 17,000 music educators from around the world that attend that clinic. And so just congratulations to conductor Matthew Black, and he's our Carmel High School percussion director. Assistant conductors was Lane Summerlin, a district percussion specialist, and then Ashley Summerlin's our middle school percussion director. But I went to the show, and it was just crazy good. I have never seen, there's all the different marimbas and xylophone. There's all these mallets that are just flying. It looks like a flock of birds just going, and it's perfectly synchronized. And it's just takes you through an amazing array of sounds, and it was just really impressive. So I'm proud of them, and I know they're going to knock 17,000 music educators' socks off when they go up to Chicago. Then the day after that, I went to the Winter Orchestra concert, and I had the honor to attend that. And our orchestra program has over 300 musicians, and the music was amazing as ever. And 2 of our top orchestras are full orchestras, so they have band members who have joined, right off the marching field. They marched right off the field right into the orchestra room. And so we have 2 full orchestras that have the band instruments with them as well. Then we have 5 string orchestras that are just straight string orchestras. And it's just amazing the amount of talent we have here in Carmel Clay Schools. And so just a shout out to directors Thomas Chen, Margaret Height, and Nicole McGuire. It's kind of fun to watch those concerts because you can see how the conductors are they have this relationship with the students, and just by the twirl of a pinky, the students just respond, and I wish I could have pulled that off of my own kids. But just amazing. And then finally, I don't know if you've heard about the Holiday Spectacular. It was spectacular. It's kind of hard to put words into to describe, the music, the dance, the choreography, the costumes, the pit orchestra, the tech support, the lights, the sound. There's over 400 students that were on the stage, and all 400 were on the stage and then just disappeared off the stage in 3 seconds, and it was like a magic trick. And it went on. There was 28 songs that were sung that night from 10 choirs. And I don't know how many kids were working behind the scenes. And when I go to that show, I always go through kind of a wide range of emotions as each group performs. If you don't know much about Carmel Choir, all students are welcomed at Carmel Choirs. No one gets cut from choir. Everybody gets to be in the choir if you want to be in the choir. So you've got this wide range of groups, and no matter how talented they are or how they just love to sing, they're all in the choir and they're all enjoying themselves. And their skills levels of different students, they're standing right next to each other and they're all just singing their hearts out. And it's just really moving and inspiring to see kids of every ability sharing the common bond of music. So kudos to directors Catherine Coons, Kyle Barker, and Anna DeBard on another incredibly spectacular holiday spectacular. I wanted to share with you and the community that I'm going to be out of the office and off the grid for a while because I'm going to go through knee replacement surgery. So it's Merry Christmas, not so happy a New Year is coming up here. And so it'll be over winter break. Dr. Ostrike's going to take my spot as on the point, and he's going to be strongly supported by Dr. Dudley and Mr. McMichael here and the rest of our team. So I look forward to seeing you all in February, but I won't be too far out of touch. My bell ringer, I just wanted to share the theme from the holiday spec this year, because in the big finale song at the end of the show, and the show is called, make sure I get it right, A Light in the Dark. So Light in the Dark was the theme of the show. And these were the lyrics in the finale. What if instead of our judgment, we softened our hearts that have hardened? Instead of certainty and pride, we love and sacrifice. It could be beautiful. Can we sing the darkness to light, sounding chords of compassion and grace? Set the swords of judgment aside. Let mercy's eyes see the other human face. And with that, I wish everyone a warm and peaceful rest of the week, followed by some quality time with those you love, and hopefully some time to rest and recharge, and happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I would like to thank you all for coming tonight. You have been a very well-behaved audience, and I always appreciate that. I am coming off a cold, and I forgot my glasses, so we have made it. I would like to remind you that winter break is until January 8th, and then our next meeting will be on January 8th. With that, I will take a motion to adjourn. So moved? Favor?
Second.
All's in favor? Happy holidays. All's in favor? I told